African Voices International, Freedom in Africa.
So much time I will want to zoom into action to talk about the theme, the underlying theme for this very month, which is transforming the global anatomy. You know, as Africans, we have come a very long way. And in as much as we are not seeing the kind of transformation we want, we can still say that we are where we used to be. There was a point in time in the African history where we were slaves to the Western world and the Eastern world, where we have no say so far as our development is concerned. Instead, we have become a working tool in the hands of the West, where we, in our sweat, shape their development to where they are today. Now the time has come for us to look to ourselves, to look within ourselves and see how best we can transform our continent, how best we can call ours our own, and how best we can change the future by starting to do something positive with what we have today. I'm very much pleased with the topic that you brought on board again today, Mr. President, and I believe that this will be an insight to us all, so that we will see what we can do as government agencies and various leaders, including the individuals, as to what we can do to transform the African anatomy. Now, when we look at the word transform, it was to change greatly the appearance of form. To change greatly the appearance of form, or to say to terraform. And at the point in which we are today, I think this is the exact word that we need to use so far as the African anatomy is concerned. We need to make a considerable transformation. This transformation to be able to impact both the human, social, economic, political scope to the extent of the geographical and the ecosystem. Whatever concerns Africa needs to be transformed. I wouldn't say that we have not made progress in the past years. Of course, we have. And I would say that that is a very good progress. But then, looking at our history so far, and looking at the input made by our senior legends in the forms, in the likes of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, the likes of Marcus Garvey, the likes of Haile Selassie, and the many numerous African leaders in the past that has all pointed their thought, their purpose, and their action in this direction, I will say that I'm afraid we have not achieved much that we should be at now. Now, there are so many things we should consider when we want to transform the global African anatomy. Most often, we point our fingers to the head of states, the head of industries, governments. Yes, of course, we have given them those powers for them to make an ambience or an enviable ambience, to create an enviable ambience for where we can operate as individuals. So whenever we point our fingers at them, we are not in the wrong space. But then pointing fingers at them also means that we should point at ourselves to see what exactly we are doing to make sure that Africa progresses. In our under today's topic, which is transforming the global African anatomy, I want to look at it under the perspective of the individual and the continent. So I say what? Transforming the global African anatomy, the individual and the continent in perspective. Now, without wasting much time, first thing that I want us to look at as a form, which of course, and whatever I'm going to say, going to draw example from whatever is already happening on the continent and how good they are that other continents or other African countries should emulate. You know, we don't want to create abstract thoughts which are not in existence already. There are some African countries that are setting the pace for development, that are trying to transform their various geolocations, And all of us need to come on board to copy such good tendencies that to help us to get to where we want to go to as a continent. Now, the first I would like to mention here is for us to begin to think of how best we need to improve in our infrastructural development. No, there is no country that has ever developed that retards on their infrastructure development. Infrastructure is always at the helm of every development. And that is what Africa needs to embrace at this moment. Now, when you look at the West, the United States of America altogether, when you look at China and all the G7 powers that we are saluting every now and then, you will realize that they have actually invested much of their time, their money into infrastructure, and that has brought them to where they are at this time. So Africa needs to follow the same pace. And I must confess that some African countries have already begun the speed, of which we all need to follow suit when we want to see that transformation that we need. And as a matter of fact, those that have taken the lead are showing very significant improvement so far as development is concerned. The indexes are giving us the figures that shows that they are doing very well. And I think they are humans, or the human society itself is appreciating the kind of development that they are seeing so far as their country is concerned. And one that I would like to mention is Ethiopia. If we should go back to Ethiopia, on the African soil right now, we should realize that Ethiopia has invested much in infrastructure development, where we are looking at the construction of Addis Ababa Djibouti Railway, which connects Ethiopia to the border part of Djibouti. See, Africa is made to have this conception that there is this border that separates us from each other. Before the white man comes to our place, we are just one nation, to put it, okay? We do not have any borders that delineate us from each other. We are just one. And so they came in and then they loot and share us. That is the word. They loot and share us. And the Spanish state, this part is mine. The British state, this part is mine. France says that this part is mine. So they begin to draw imaginary lines between us to show that we are different entities. We are not. So this is the time for us. If we want to transform, then we must begin to think of the fact that we need to come together, unify ourselves, and work together in the interest of the African continent. And one way that we need to do is to real start infrastructure like the way Ethiopia is going. That will connect the regions. And the moment we are connected by regions, it means that we are able to trade between ourselves and make our economy very vibrant and resilient. And Ethiopia is one of those that are showing the way. Ethiopia has built, according to records, about 5,000 kilometers new railway lines which connect Ethiopia and other borders around it. And that is the best way that we can transform ourselves. We are not an island to sit aloof and say we are going to transform. You see, we need interdependency. One country within the continent cannot do all. We cannot provide all the resources we need. And since we cannot do all of that, what we always do is to go to the Western world, import from them, and whenever we are exporting to them, we export raw materials, they import them to us at very high prices that we cannot pay, making our lives very miserable and unbearable. All right. So one of the major things we need to do is to copy the pace of Ethiopia and try to build infrastructures that will open our system to the various African countries and allow us to cooperate. Look at Rwanda. After the 1994 genocide, okay, look at where Rwanda is now. Where Rwanda used to be first and where Rwanda is now. What exactly has caused this huge or mega transformation? When you check the records, one of the major things that has caused this huge transformation that is putting Rwanda on the map and telling us that it's one of the fastest economy growing so far as Africa is concerned is the building of infrastructure. Rwanda has invested so much in building roads, bridges, airports, and other critical infrastructure. All right, and this has tried to connect Rwanda to economic growth. Roads like the highway that connects Kigali to Tanzania. You check, It's one of the best things that Rwanda has invested in. And this has helped with trade links, investment in energy infrastructure, including the construction of new power plants and transmission lines, which is trying to improve the access to electricity and in Kigali, right? Aside that, they have the Kigali Converter Center that has attracted many international organizations to hold their events in Rwanda. And you know what that means? Okay, you know what that means? Because the moment a lot of people are tripping into your country, it tells you that your economy is going to do well, many investors are going to come in, and many people are going to invest in the economy. And that is very good for us. Okay, it is not all the time that we have to go outside, but we need to put in certain things like some development in place that is going to attract people to come in and invest in the country. When people come in, they are going to buy goods and products. They are going to pay for their services. Before they go, all these monies remain in the continent, and that will be used viably to transform our economy. Another one that we can look at as far as Rwanda is concerned is, Kenya is concerned, is the construction of a new railway line to connect Nairobi and Mombasa, right? And these are the things, like I said, we need. For instance, when you go back to the words of Nkrumah, he says that we must work hard to remove the artificial borders created by the imperialists and learn to work and what? Survive together. So there is no way these things can be met, or there is no way we can reach out to this thing if we refuse to build such infrastructures that will connect us. Right? We don't need to build walls around ourselves, but we need to build bridges. We need to connect ourselves to other African continents if we want the anatomy to develop. Another thing that we should look at as Africans, or as a continent, so far as our development is concerned, when it comes to transforming the anatomy, is urbanization. When you look at Ghana, for instance, the highest percentage of our population are not living in urban areas. Okay. They are living in rural areas, and that is not good for us. When we are saying that they are living in rural areas, and this is not just Ghana, most of our African countries, it means that they have not access to good roads. They do not have good access to electricity. They do not have access to good housing system. They do not have access to good education and health facilities. And the moment those things are taken out of the equation, it means that development is retarded. And the only way we can transform the anatomy, and transforming the anatomy only looks in one direction, development. And the only way we can do that is try to urbanize our rural centers. That is try to create a lot of infrastructures that will help these people, that will ease the lifestyle of these people living within the rural areas. Okay, there are rural areas right now that when you get, even in Ghana here, that you can't even get access to an internet or a network to even make a phone call. Right? The roads are in a very deplorable state. The health facilities are very poor. It wouldn't surprise you to know that pregnant women need to be pulled in wheelbarrow to the next health center, which is miles and miles away. Can you imagine the number of lives we would have lost in that process? And here we are saying what? African is okay? No, we cannot say that. Right? African needs a lot of input. And for us to transform that, we need to look at ourselves again. We need to try very hard to urbanize our rural areas to make sure that things that will make life easy, okay, and sustain life needs to be brought to the people. Urbanization, for instance, Rwanda is doing very well. When you check the records, okay, about 16% of the total population of Rwanda citizens are living in urban centers. And we are expecting the growth in percentage-wise to increase, and that is good. We count to one before we count two. The question is, can that be applied to other African countries? No, right? Not even my country, Ghana. So even in the urban centers, sometimes we still find it difficult to say. I don't know if I should even say that in Ghana, we are really living in urban centers, because some of our roads are still in a very deplorable state, okay? Getting access to water is a situation. When you come to Accra, for instance, which is supposed to be known as the urban center, or the capital, okay, is having so much issue when it comes to electricity. We call it Johnson. All right, erratic power supply every now and then that you cannot schedule your life around it. Our water supply system is very poor. Today, water is flowing through your tap. The next minute, there is no water flowing through your tap. All these things are issues that we need to address so far as we want to transform the economy. Because we cannot have these issues at our back that will meet the demand of our energy usage, and that becomes a problem. All right. Aside those of us or those who are living in the urban centers or the capitals of the various regions, most of the people living in the rural areas are still using the lanterns and the fossil fuels and the rest. That is not transformation. I'm not trying to say that we can create a utopian society where there wouldn't be any rural centers. No, there will be rural centers. But the question is, what is the percentage of rural centers against the urban centers? And even those living in the urban centers, are they really enjoying what it takes to say that this is urbanization? That's a rhetorical question, which I believe we really know the answer. The answer is no. So we need to really work hard on renewable energy. Morocco, for instance, right? We can copy from Morocco what Morocco is doing. Morocco now is the leader in renewable energy in Africa with one of the largest solar panel plants in the world. Okay, the name is the No Pazazit. If I got the name right, if you have any one Moroccan here that will help me with that work. Okay, providing about 580 megawatt capacity. 580 megawatt capacity, and this is a renewable. It is straight from solar. If we all can concentrate on creating such energy, I'm sure we are blessed with the sunlight. The solar is here. It's burning our skin. It's sometimes distorting our day-to-day activity. Why don't we use it to our advantage? All right. If the sun is scorching us, at least we know that we are making good use of it. It is providing us with some level of energy. I think our hearts will be glad. It will gladden our heart. And we believe that we are not just suffering from the heat of the sun, but we are also trying to use it to our advantage. Okay. And Morocco, for instance, because of the power plant that we are able to build, it has helped the country to reduce their dependence on fossil fuel. And that is what all other African countries should be considering if they are really into the idea of transforming Africa. We need to copy from one another and look at the very good things that will help us to progress so far as the continent is concerned. One thing that we cannot leave out of the equation so far as transformation is concerned is digitalization. I think Ghana has come a long way as far as digitalization is concerned, even though the processes of digitalization is bringing in much issues. Recently has been streaming through the various social media, and I've realized that a lot of people are getting scammed because their informations are on the internet, and these fraudsters have so much risk so far as the usage of the internet is concerned. I believe it is part of the process. At a point in time, we'll be able to build a very strong system that will deter, if not bring it to the minimum, how these fraud activities are going on. But yes, digitization is something that we cannot run away from. All right, those who have shown us the way, like the West and the East, have shown us that digitization is one of opening an economy is concerned and trying to develop it is concerned. One African country that we should consider, like I mentioned earlier, is Ghana. And now Ghana, you don't have to always carry hard currency on us before we can do payment. That makes ease of business, of doing business. You can pay your bills via mobile money. We call it mobile money. And we have the interoperability. We have various kind of networks, but then it doesn't matter which network you are using. You can pay money across board, and we can even pay money or do business across the continent, in other continents. And aside that, you can also link your phone to your bank, where you can draw money and send money without having to pick a card to the bank to waste more money in terms of TNT and waste time. So all this digitalization is helping to see some form of development, because time is money. And if you can as well take money from the bank without taking cards to the bank, if you can purchase something in the United States without having to think about how we use the hard currency, or you can purchase or do business with someone across regions without having to go there, then it tells you that we are on the progress. And that is what all African countries should embrace. This is not only Ghana that is making this stride, but a country like Kenya has also shown good leadership when it comes to digital innovation, like the M-Pesa, which has revolutionized their money payment in their country as well. All right, so those are some of the things. And also, recently I was listening to some various debates in our Ghanaian Parliament House, and then because you know what politics entails, every party wants to look good before the people or before the citizens. There is this argument of who is doing well, who did do well so far as development is concerned. We're trying to debate on our optic fiber in the country. The National Democratic Congress says that they are bullish in a position as at now, says that they have built enough fiber optic networks, and the MPP who are in power are also saying that they have built enough fiber optic networks. It doesn't matter who is involved in the building, but those are some of the things that we really need so that we can give access to internet network to talking to someone. Look at what we are doing here. I believe it's not all of us that here that are Ghanaians. Some are from other countries across Africa. I can see Matuaj of Richard here, who is not in Ghana. I've just forgotten his continent, that is part of Africa that he is. But then, I think Kenya also. So these are the networks that we need to connect ourselves. Not necessarily we have to travel so many hours before we are able to connect to each other and all that. The moment we do this, we are enhancing development. And digitalization is one thing. It's the one major thing that we cannot do away with. When you look at, how do we call it, Tanzania and Mozambique too are following the same thing. So all other African countries should look within and to see what their fellow colleagues are doing at what area of development, so that we can all copy each other and progress towards the Africa we want. And the only way we can do that is to take digitalization very important. Now, all what I've been saying, you realize that one major thing has been a theme, that is unification of Africa. Okay, the unification of Africa. The African Union has been here for decades. Okay, and its purpose is to unite Africa, put us under one umbrella to be able to fight the imperialists. Only God knows if it is an issue of personal aggrandizement that is unable to help us forge that peace and unity that we intend to get together. One thing that we need to look at so far as we want transforming Africa is concerned is to look again at our regional integration. The African Continental Free Trade Area is a good example, and I'm very glad that about 54 countries were able to sign on this great big market. What it means is that the African Continental Free Trade Area agreement is that it's going to open our markets, okay, so that we will interdepend on each other. Let's assume that we provide cocoa or cocoa to Rwanda, then Rwanda can, so they will go into this agreement. So instead of us looking outside, we will rather, it's going to be a table that is turning around, okay, where you give what you have to what your friend or your brother doesn't have or your sister doesn't have, and she gives you what you don't have. In so doing, we do not spend much on importation importation and exportation. But whatever we are doing is happening within the continent, and it makes it easier. So uniting the regional front. The last thing I spoke about was the regional integration, which is a must for us, and that is aligned to the African continental free trade area. So if our leaders can actually bring their, this thing has been signed somewhere in 2003, and so now it has not been very effective. I think there is a need, if we are interested in the agreement itself was meant to progress Africa, to transform Africa, and bring Africa to the kind of development that we want. If that is really the mindset of our leaders, then I don't see the reason why this particular agreement is not very vibrant as at now. We really need to see that development, and I expect our leaders to actually invest their time and their money in making sure that this agreement become a fully fleshed reality that we can all tap from. Another issue, there has been if you go back to Rousseau, okay, the theories of Rousseau, the theories of development that Rousseau propounded, there have been no economy that developed without agriculture. Agri has been an age-long economy, all right, and every economy that has seen the light, that has industrialized, okay, has agriculture as its rock, as its foundation. And that is what we all need to look at. Mr. President, forgive me, but there have been recent, let me use Ghana because I'm a Ghanaian and I'm in Ghana, probably that will help. Recent happening in Ghana, so far as our economy is concerned. I went to buy pepper recently, okay? Pepper, normal pakoshito. So I went to one woman around my area, and the woman, I said, I just need something small to grind, like something 1 cedi to grind pepper for my bank. And can you imagine? The woman counted pepper for me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 9. 9, I don't know, 9 sibling or whatever pepper as 1 cedi. I was like, that means, are they now counting pepper 1 for 10 pesos or what? All these arable lands around us. And the most astonishing aspect is the thing for this particular government, we see that planting for food and jobs, okay? Eat Ghana, grow Ghana. And one district, one factory, and one district, one dam to for irrigation, and the slogan nearing and all the things. And here we are, we can't even afford pepper. Okay, it's kind of a worry. If that we produce in our own country, we can't afford them. What are we doing? Now I believe that the size of milk. Last time I took milk, I wanted to make tea. By the time I realized the milk is finished in the can, I can't even feel it in my tea. We say that the is you. Kinky is now 4 cedis, 5 cedis. There is this food we call coffee brook, which is roasted plantain. Normally those days, when you don't have money, that is what you sort to. But now coffee brook man is no more coffee brook man. If you don't have money, you can't afford that thing. And that is just a normal plantain. See, I have a friend that is working with Cocoa Board, and he is in, I think, the Western North. The last time he was paying a visit to me, the quantum of plantain he brought to me was, I marvel. Right? The only issue that we are having is that, you see, all these things are interconnected. So when you don't pay much attention, it will be as though I've been mentioning things over and over again. But you see, because we refuse to develop our infrastructure in the form of food, it is very difficult for us to ship those products from the rural centers to the urban centers. All right, and the hikes in fuel prices. Just last year, I think somewhere in June, we were buying a liter of fuel at 6 cedis or 7 cedis thereabout, and the dollar was at the same level. But just what has changed? The fuel hike was as far as 18 cedis, and recently it has come down to 12 cedis, 11 cedis, and our leaders are happy that our economy is doing well. But look at the increase within the shortest space of time. All these things will not help us to progress if we can't even be comfortable with the foods that we produce in our continent. then I don't know how we are going to transform this economy, and I mean the economy of the whole world continent. I believe this is not just an issue that is of concern to Ghana. It is an issue that is of concern to the whole continent. I always want to use Rwanda because of their efforts in developing, looking at where they are coming from. All right. So whenever I'm trying to make example, I always like to use them because they are doing very well for us to realize that even Rwanda, who was suffering from genocide, if they can rise to this level, then it means that the African continent at large are just playing. We are not really ready to transform our economy. Rwanda, for example, okay, the Rwanda government has prioritized agriculture in its development agenda where it provides farmers with credit, it provides farmers with fertilizer, and it provides farmers with what? High yield seeds. Issue in Ghana, yes, similar things have been professed in Ghana, yes, but it becomes a political issue at hand. Now, the last thing I want to talk about under the transformation of Africa, what Africa needs to look at is the issue of security. Mr. President, this is becoming a worry because the human resources that we are losing every second, day by day, is really alarming. All right, there is no development in as much as you look at development economic-wise and political-wise and all that. The human resource is at the helm of every development, and when we begin to lose them, then I don't know how development will take place, because infrastructure development is the handiwork of the human resource. All right, any kind of development we see is the handiwork of the human resource. But terrorism, look at for how long have Nigeria been facing Boko Haram? I think this is somewhere since 2009, and there has been nothing done about it. Today they catch Boko Haram, the next time Boko Haram escaped, and the next day Boko Haram has attacked children and bombings and all sorts of issues. Meanwhile, we have African securities all over, West Break, East Break, and a whole lot of breaks all over. What are they doing? How can we develop if people are scared to invest in an economy? Yes, they can't come in because these terrorists will not allow you to. At any point in time, you may be a victim. Your industry may be a victim. All right? So we need to come together, and the only way we can attack, we can deal with this issue is when we unify ourselves. When we all come together and we purpose our mind towards working together to eradicate this. It is not only Nigeria that is suffering, and it is not only Boko Haram. In recent time, I've heard of Islamic State West African Province, which is the ISWA, who has also emerged in the region, terrorizing the citizens of Nigeria. And the spade must be called. It is alarming. All right, things needs to be done to make sure that these things are abated. Somalia, I don't need to say. We all know what is happening in Somalia. Al-Shabaab, all right, and they have been since 2006. 2006 to date, how many years now? That is over 2 decades, right? Yes, or close to 2 decades. And still, we are not able to do anything against it. But we claim we have an African Union, and we are united. Our unity is only in theory. There's nothing practical about it. And we cannot transform this continent with this kind of behavior. So we need a setup to rethink what exactly we want to do, how we will be able to resolve that issue. Mali's Al Qaeda, all right, in the Islamic Maghreb, it's also there. We're studying them. This is Mali. Burkina Faso is also facing the Ansarul Islam, and the Jannat Nusrat, Al Islam, and Wal Muslim, which is the Jinim. All right, and the Islamic State in the Greater Sahara, which is the ISGS. All these issues are heady. Mozambique is not left out of it. How can we transform? So if we are looking at transforming the African anatomy, then we as Africans, the continent in perspective, we need to realign our mindset and come together, put our resources together, both human resources. Our leaders need to have a particular foresight where they will all input their leadership skills to make sure that they bring peace, unity, and they bring satisfaction to the people of the continent. That is the only way we can develop. Now, proceed. As I speak, almost all that I've made mention of gears towards the continent, and then, for that matter, our leaders are responsible. But you see, they say that one that calls for equity must come with a clean hand. Are we, as the individual, also behaving in such a manner that will make us see the kind of Africa we want, or that will put Africa on the transformative pedestal? It is a question for all of us. We are so much concerned with ourselves that we forget that Africa needs us, and before Africans can progress, we need to play a larger role. One major thing that we do not make right is our stewardship to our environment. Okay, when you come to Ghana, for instance, every year, right, the government spends so many millions of cedis just to dredge our gutters. It's a place that we see posting pictures of some parts of this country, especially the city Accra, right, complaining about how irresponsible the citizens are. We always do all of these things. Then we call on our leaders that they are not doing the right thing. While our leaders will not descend from their home to filter our gutters and to cause rubbish everywhere. We drink sachet water, we dump the rubbish in gutters. We cannot develop. If we cannot develop from our homes ourselves, then the major continent cannot develop, because the problem needs to be solved from the basement, and we ourselves are the major issue. So one way we can transform Africa is when the individual living within the continent are stewards to the environment. The issue of ecosystem is sounding every now and then, right? There are famine everywhere, food, so lack of food. Even our major industry are not willing to practice their corporate social responsibility, and everything is just going wayward. We need to readjust ourselves and re-put ourselves in the way of being stewards to the environment, all right? Protecting the environment and practicing safe practices that will sustain us for so many years to come. And we should always know that this world is not our home, all right? Those who begin to profess these ideas from them, and hey, we are going to join our maker, and this world will be left behind for our children, our great-grandchildren. What kind of legacy, what kind of environment are we leaving for them? Is it a toxic one, or one that supports life? It's a question we need to answer. And to be environmentally friendly, the ecosystem should be friendly, is when we are stewards of the environment, and we try to practice safe practices to protect the environment.
African Voices International, Freedom in Africa.
To help develop our continent at large. So as individuals, one of such things that we are doing right now is what we are doing right now. I will also say that we need to step up our game by finding ourselves in institutions, or when we find ourselves in institutions and any kind of organization or any society, we should voice out. It shouldn't be an issue of because I don't belong to party or view, I don't do politics. No, this is what we call civic engagement. All right, so we should champion human rights. We should be volunteers participating in the development of our country. And the moment our country develops, the continent will develop. We should be part of democratic processes. We should also be part of communal labors and community engagement. I believe that when we the individuals are able to take up this role, we will be able to make Africa what we want it to be. In a nutshell, Mr. President, the African continent is making efforts to progress. Yes, and it comes up to most of our leaders. I do not know what the West and the East have seen in us. Recently, Kamala Harris was in Africa, Ghana and other parts of the continent. China is seriously invading, and France is also tackling at the time for us to speak to the New World Order. And we cannot do that if we don't put ourselves in a position that will make us develop. All right. The G7 did not just take over the name the Great Seven for nothing. It is because they are able to enhance their economy to a level that seems insurmountable or that seems unachievable. Okay. They are able to build very good security system. They are able to build very good economy, a very vibrant and resilient one for that matter. All right. They are able to build a very good human resource, and all these things are things that make a country great, are things that make a continent to develop. So what I'm trying to say is that Africa must also look at those. In as much as the development are not happening on the continent, Africa needs to look at what has happened in the West, look within ourselves, and try to find those things like digitization, to find a means to improve their infrastructure, to find a means to begin to bring about urbanization, to also look at renewable energy, and then to integrate the region, agriculture, and as well enhance our regional security to make sure that we develop. And the individual must also turn our face to entrepreneurship. We must try to educate ourselves in all spheres of life. We must be able to engage in civic engagement or civic talks. And then we should also be very innovative and serve as stewards to the environment. I believe that Africa is not far from a transformation if we are able to do this. We will develop no matter what needs, and Africa will be great again. Thank you, Mr. President, for giving me the opportunity. I'm grateful.